The knife hit something that wasn't bone. Marcus stopped mid-carve. Through the doorway, his mother was telling a story about his father, and Michelle's kids were laughing, and David was topping off Jenny's wine. The Thanksgiving hum of a family doing what families do. He worked the blade around the obstruction. Metal, a ring, gold band still warm from the oven. Grease pooled in the inscription, "To David, forever yours." His wife's name was Michelle. David was his co-worker. David was married to Jenny, Michelle's best friend since college. David was in the next room, cutting his turkey with the good silver. Marcus turned the ring in his palm. The inscription caught kitchen light. Cursive. Michelle's handwriting. He knew her handwriting. Laughter from the dining room. Someone asking if he needed help. "Almost done," he called. His voice sounded normal. His hands weren't shaking yet. He put the ring in his pocket and kept carving. The turkey came apart under his hands the way it always did. White meat, dark meat, arranged on the platter Michelle had inherited from her grandmother. Blue and white china. She said it made Thanksgiving feel real. Marcus carried it to the table, set it down between the cranberry sauce and the green bean casserole his mother made every year. Michelle smiled at him from the other end, candles catching something soft in her expression. "Beautiful job, babe." "Thanks," he sat. The ring pressed against his thigh like a coal that wouldn't cool. David was talking about a project at work. Something about quarterly projections, the kind of thing Marcus usually tuned out. Tonight, he listened, watched David's hands as he gestured, left hand specifically. The tan line on his ring finger, pale against November skin. "You okay?" Michelle asked. Marcus looked at her. 6 years of marriage. 6 years of this table, these plates, this ritual. Her face open and easy, the face of a woman with nothing to hide. "Fine, just tired. The holidays, right?" David raised his glass. "To surviving another year." Everyone drank. Marcus brought the wine to his lips without swallowing. Dinner lasted an hour and 40 minutes. He knew because he watched the clock above the sideboard, counting time in increments that felt like dental work. Michelle laughed at David's jokes. Jenny touched her husband's arm with casual ownership. Marcus's mother talked about the church fundraiser. The kids argued about something on their phones. Normal. All of it achingly, impossibly normal. When the plates cleared, Marcus stood. "I'll handle the dishes." "You don't have to," Michelle said. "I want to." She gave him a look, grateful, maybe confused, and went to the living room with the others. Football sounds drifted in, his mother asking if anyone wanted pie. Marcus filled the sink. Hot water, soap, steam rising. He reached into his pocket. The ring sat in his palm, smaller than his own wedding band. David's fingers were thinner. He'd noticed that before without knowing why it mattered. "To David. Forever yours." Michelle's cursive. The way she looped her M's, distinctive as a fingerprint. He'd seen it on grocery lists, birthday cards, the note she left on his pillow when she went to bed before him. "Miss you. Come up soon." He photographed the ring, close up on the inscription, saved it to a folder he created on the spot. Evidence. The word felt ridiculous. Evidence of what? His wife giving jewelry to another man. His co-worker wearing a ring that wasn't his wedding band. The whole thing absurd, like a bad movie plot, except the ring was real and warm and heavy in his hand. Footsteps behind him. Marcus closed his fist. David appeared at the counter, reaching for the wine bottle. "Thought I'd top everyone off." "Sure." "Hell of a bird this year." Michelle outdid herself. "She's good at that." Marcus kept his eyes on the sink. "Outdoing herself." "You okay, man? You seem off." Marcus turned. David stood there with the bottle, concerned expression arranged just right. Co-worker, friend of the family, the guy who'd helped him move a couch last spring. "Just tired," Marcus said again. "The holidays." David nodded like this explained everything. "Jenny's got us running ragged with her family stuff too. You know how it is." "I do." David's left hand rested on the counter. The tan line glared under the kitchen lights. "Lose something?" Marcus asked. David blinked. "What?" "Nothing." Marcus handed him the corkscrew. "Happy Thanksgiving, David." A flicker of something crossed David's face. Confusion, maybe, or the first cold touch of fear. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual easy smile. "You too, buddy. You too." He left with the wine. Marcus stood at the sink until his hands stopped shaking. The house emptied slowly. His mother was first, kissing his cheek and telling him to get some rest. The kids retreated to their rooms with the glazed look of teenagers who'd survived mandatory family time. Jenny hugged Michelle at the door, promising to call about book club. "We should do New Year's together," Jenny said. "The four of us." "Absolutely," Michelle agreed. "It's tradition." David shook Marcus's hand on the way out. Firm grip, direct eye contact. "See you Monday." See you." Marcus watched their car back out of the driveway. Jenny in the passenger seat checking her phone. David adjusting the mirror, one hand on the wheel. The hand without a ring. Midnight. Michelle asleep beside him, breathing slow and even. She'd brushed her teeth, done her skincare routine, kissed him goodnight the way she always did. Nothing different. Nothing wrong. Marcus stared at the ceiling. The ring was in his sock drawer now, tucked beneath winter socks he never wore. He'd considered a dozen places, garage, car, office, but the drawer felt right. Close enough to touch, far enough to pretend it wasn't there. His phone glowed in the dark. He typed, "How did ring get inside turkey?" The results were useless. Cooking accidents, lost jewelry, nothing about adultery, nothing about evidence. The bird was brined for 2 days, seasoned, stuffed, roasted for 4 hours. Michelle did all of it, alone, because she insisted, "This is my contribution." A ring couldn't fall into a turkey by accident. Not through that much preparation. It had to be placed. Which meant either she didn't know it was there, impossible, given the inscription, or she wanted him to find it. Marcus turned that over in the dark. A confession she couldn't make with words. A test to see if he was paying attention. A cruelty so specific it felt like art. Or maybe David had been careless. Taken off the ring to carve something at Michelle's counter, dropped it into the cavity by accident. But David hadn't been in the kitchen before dinner. Marcus would have noticed, and the ring was deep. He'd had to work the knife around it, placed, deliberately, by someone who knew he'd be the one carving. Michelle shifted beside him, her hand finding his arm in sleep. Warm fingers, familiar weight. He lay very still and let her hold him. The ceiling offered no answers. The ring in his drawer pulsed like a second heartbeat. In 6 hours, Michelle would wake up and make coffee and ask him what he wanted for breakfast, and he would have to decide what kind of man he was going to be. The kind who confronted. The kind who waited. The kind who already knew and chose not to see. That last thought landed somewhere deep and stayed there. 6 months ago, a text on her phone. "Can't wait to see you." He'd told himself it was her sister. Marcus closed his eyes. He hadn't scrolled, hadn't asked, hadn't wanted the answer badly enough to risk the question. Now the answer was in his sock drawer, inscribed in gold, and he couldn't unknow it. Forever yours. Somebody's forever, just not his. Friday morning, Michelle went to yoga. Her car's GPS said otherwise. Marcus stood at the kitchen window, coffee untouched, watching her back out of the driveway. She'd kissed him on the cheek before leaving. Back by noon, "Babe," and he'd nodded like a man who believed her. The location-sharing app was her idea. Set up 2 years ago, after a scare on the highway, her car stalled in a dead zone. "For safety," she'd said. "So you always know where I am." He opened it now. Her little blue dot moved east on Route 33, past the yoga studio, past the shopping district, onto I-71, heading south. 40 minutes later, it stopped at a Holiday Inn Express off exit 104. Marcus sat at the kitchen table and watched the dot hold position. An hour, 2 hours. At 11:15, the dot began moving again, north on I-71, back toward home. He closed the app before she pulled into the driveway. "Good class?" he asked when she came through the door. "Intense." Michelle dropped her yoga bag by the stairs. "New instructor. Really pushed us." Yeah?" "My shoulders are killing me." She rolled them for emphasis, wincing. "I need a shower." "Take your time." He listened to the water run. Pictured her standing under the spray, washing off whatever needed washing. The Holiday Inn Express had hourly rates. He'd checked. When she came down, hair damp, face fresh, she found him at his laptop. "Working from home?" "Called in sick." "Marcus." Concern in her voice, or a performance of it. "You never call in sick." "Felt off this morning. Probably the turkey." She laughed. "My turkey? I'll have you know that was my best work." It was something, all right. If she heard the edge, she didn't show it. Just kissed the top of his head and went to start laundry like any other Friday. The credit card statements went back 18 months. Their joint account, the one she used for groceries and household things. He'd never scrutinized it before. What was the point? They weren't struggling. She didn't overspend. Trust was easier than auditing. Now he scrolled through charges with the focus of a forensic accountant. Hotels, 4 in the past year, all within 2 hours of home. All on days she'd mentioned yoga, book club, running errands. Gas stations, a pattern emerged. Fill-ups on Route 33, then again near I-71. Distances that didn't match her stated destinations. A jewelry purchase 8 months ago. Worthington Fine Jewelers. $487.30 total. About what a gold band with custom engraving would cost. Marcus screenshot everything, added it to the folder. Evidence. The word didn't feel ridiculous anymore. Dean's truck pulled into the driveway just after noon, diesel engine rattling the windows. He didn't knock. Hadn't for years. Just walked in, boots tracking mud Michelle would have complained about. "You look like hammered shit," Dean said. "Thanks. Drove 3 hours. You're welcome." He helped himself to coffee from the pot. Marcus had let go cold. So, what's the emergency? Marcus handed him the ring. Dean turned it over, squinting at the inscription. His lips moved as he read. Then he set it on the table like it might bite. Where'd you find this? Inside the turkey. Inside the, Dean stopped. Processed. She put it in there? Someone did. Christ. Dean rubbed his face. He'd shaved recently, which was unusual. There must have been a woman involved. That's cold, Marcus. That's ice cold. It gets better. Marcus turned the laptop toward him. 8 months of charges. Hotels, gas stations, and this. He pointed to the jewelry purchase, right around when David stopped wearing his wedding ring to work. Dean leaned in, reading. His jaw tightened. David Chen. You're David? Corner office, golf on Saturdays, married to Michelle's best friend. Yeah. And Michelle knows you found this? Not yet. Dean straightened. Looked at Marcus with something that might have been respect, might have been pity. Hard to tell with Dean. So what's the play? I don't know yet. Bullshit. You didn't call me down here to hold your hand. You've got a play. You're just not sure if it's the right one. Marcus didn't answer. Outside, a car passed. Normal Friday. Normal world. None of it touching the thing on the table between them. They sat on the back porch despite the cold. Gray sky, dead grass, the kind of November afternoon that made you understand why people moved south. Dean had found bourbon in the cabinet above the fridge. Marcus forgot he'd put it there and poured 2 glasses without asking. I never liked her, Dean said. Marcus looked at him. For what it's worth. From the jump, something felt off. Too smooth, too perfect, like she was auditioning. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were happy, or you looked happy? Dean shrugged. Same thing, right? Who am I to mess with that? I've got 2 ex-wives in a trailer. Not exactly relationship expert material. Marcus turned the glass in his hands. The bourbon caught what little light the clouds allowed. I thought I was, he said. Happy. Maybe you were. Doesn't mean she was real. A bird landed on the fence, looked at them, flew off. Somewhere down the block, a kid was bouncing a basketball. Thud, thud, thud. What do you want, Marcus? What? Out of this. Revenge? Answers? Just out? The question sat there, too big to answer quickly. What did he want? 24 hours ago, he'd wanted turkey and football and maybe some pie. He'd wanted Michelle to laugh at his jokes and his mother to stop asking about grandchildren. Simple things. Small things. Now he wanted to know who he'd been married to. I want the truth, he said finally. All of it. Before I do anything, I want to know everything she'll try to lie about. Dean nodded slowly. So you're building a case. I'm building a case. Against your wife. Against whoever she's been pretending to be. Dean considered this, took a long drink, set the glass down on the porch railing, where it would leave a ring Michelle would notice and complain about. Okay, he said. Then we do it your way. What's next? David's wife, Jenny. The best friend? She deserves to know. And she might know things I don't. Risky. You tell her it gets back to Michelle. Whole thing blows up before you're ready. Maybe. Marcus stared at the dead grass. But I can't be the only one carrying this. I can't sit across from Jenny at New Year's and make small talk while I know her husband's screwing my wife. Dean was quiet for a long moment. You're a better man than me, he said. I'd burn it down. Wouldn't think twice. Yeah, well, Marcus finished his bourbon. Maybe that's why you've got 2 ex-wives. Dean laughed. Short, surprised, genuine. Fair enough. He stood, stretched, looked at the gray sky like it owed him something. You want me to stay? I can crash on your couch. Be here when you need to talk. Michelle would notice. Michelle's been sneaking off to the Holiday Inn. Think she's got room to notice anything? Marcus almost smiled. Almost. Go home, Dean. I'll call you after I talk to Jenny. Dean hesitated, then nodded. You're not alone in this. You know that, right? I know. Okay. He clapped Marcus on the shoulder, hard, the way their father used to. Don't do anything stupid until you call me first. Define stupid. Oh, anything that ends with you in handcuffs or her in the ground. I'll try. Dean left the way he came. No goodbye. Just the sound of his truck starting and the rattle of diesel fading down the street. Marcus sat on the porch until the cold got into his bones. The ring was in his pocket again. He'd taken it from the table without deciding to. His hand found it now, thumb tracing the inscription through the fabric. Forever yours. He thought about Jenny, what she knew, what she suspected, what it would mean to her when he showed her this. He thought about Michelle, inside the house, doing laundry like nothing was wrong, because for her, maybe nothing was. Maybe this was just her life, the real one, the one she'd built behind his back, and he was the interruption. He pulled out his phone. Jenny answered on the first ring. Jenny Ostrowski answered on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. Marcus. Not a question, not surprised. Just his name, flat and heavy. We need to talk. Silence on the line. He could hear her breathing, the faint sound of a television in the background, a child's voice asking something. I know, she said. I've been wondering when someone would call. Marcus closed his eyes, so she knew, or suspected, or had been drowning in the same slow dread he'd only just discovered. Can we meet? He asked. Somewhere not here. There's a diner off Route 161, Bucky's. You know it? I can find it. 1 hour. She hung up before he could respond. Bucky's was the kind of place that survived on coffee and regulars, wood paneling from the 70s, vinyl booths patched with duct tape, a waitress who called everyone hon and meant it. Jenny was already there when Marcus arrived, tucked into a corner booth with her back to the wall. She looked smaller than he remembered from Thanksgiving. Had it only been 2 days? Her hands wrapped around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. He slid into the seat across from her. The waitress appeared, poured him coffee without asking, and disappeared. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. How long have you known? Jenny asked finally. Thursday, during dinner. He reached into his pocket. I found this in the turkey. He set the ring on the table between them. Jenny stared at it. Her face didn't change, but her hands tightened around the cup until her knuckles went white. May I? Go ahead. She picked it up, turned it toward the window light, reading the inscription. Her lips moved silently. To David, forever yours. M. That's her handwriting, Jenny said. Michelle's. I know. She has that cursive. The loops. Jenny's voice was distant, clinical, like she was describing evidence in someone else's life. I always thought it was pretty. She set the ring down, didn't push it back toward him. How long have you known? Marcus asked. Or suspected? Jenny laughed. It wasn't a laugh. It was the sound of something cracking. A year, maybe longer. She finally took a sip of coffee, made a face. Cold, probably. Little things at first. David working late when there was no reason to. New cologne. The way he started showering before bed instead of in the morning. Did you ask him? Once? Directly. Her jaw tightened. He said I was being crazy. That I was creating problems where there weren't any. He had this way of saying it, concerned, like he was worried about me, about my mental health. As Marcus recognized the technique. Gaslighting, they called it now. Making you doubt your own perceptions until reality felt negotiable. I told myself he was right, Jenny continued, that I was paranoid, stressed. The kids, the house, his job, there was always an explanation. I wanted the explanation more than I wanted the truth. I know exactly what you mean. She looked at him. Really looked, for the first time since he sat down. You do, don't you? 6 months ago, there was a text on Michelle's phone. Can't wait to see you. I told myself it was her sister. Was it her sister? We both know it wasn't. The waitress came by, refilled their cups, left. Neither of them acknowledged her. When did it start? Jenny asked. Did she tell you? She doesn't know I know, not yet. Jenny's eyebrows rose. You haven't confronted her? I'm building a case. I want to know everything before I give her a chance to lie about it. Smart. She nodded slowly. I wish I'd done that. Instead, I just asked, and he lied, and I believed him because believing was easier. Marcus picked up the ring, turned it in his fingers. The inscription caught the diner's fluorescent light. He stopped wearing his wedding ring about 8 months ago, he said. I noticed at work, didn't think anything of it. He told me it was getting resized. Then he said he lost it at the gym. Then it was irritating his skin. Jenny's voice went flat. 3 different stories. I should have known then. You trusted him. I wanted to trust him. There's a difference. Silence. Johnny Cash came on the jukebox, someone's idea of atmosphere. I fell into a burning ring of fire. Neither of them smiled. I pulled our phone records this morning, Jenny said. After you called. Marcus straightened. And? He's been texting her number for 2 years. Not 18 months, not a year. 2 years, Marcus. Before the ring, before whatever she told you it started. 2 years. The number landed like a second verdict. He'd been doing math in his head, holidays, birthdays, their anniversary, and now he had to recalculate everything. There's more. Jenny's voice wavered for the first time. Charges on his card I never questioned. A weekend in Columbus when he said he was at a conference. A hotel in Cleveland when he said he was visiting his mother. When was he visiting his mother? His mother's been dead for 5 years. Marcus set the ring down. It clicked against the formica. Jesus. Yeah. Jenny wrapped her hands around her fresh coffee, seeking warmth that wasn't there. I'm filing Monday. I called a lawyer this morning, before you called. I was going to do it anyway. Her voice caught. I needed to know I wasn't crazy first. You're not crazy. No. She looked at him. Really looked? The way you look at someone who's pulled you from water. I'm not. And neither are you. They sat with that. The jukebox switched to something softer. The waitress wiped down the counter. The world continued. What are you going to do? Jenny asked. I don't know yet. Confront her eventually, but not until I understand the shape of it. The shape? How long? How deep? Whether it was just him or... He stopped. The thought was too ugly to finish. You think there were others? I don't know what I think anymore. Jenny slid the ring back across the table toward him. Keep it, she said. It's evidence. And of what? Of whatever comes next. Marcus pocketed the ring. It settled against his thigh, like it belonged there now, like it had always been his to carry. Jenny. He waited until she'd met his eyes. I'm sorry. For what? You didn't do this. No. But I'm sorry you've been carrying it alone. For a year, that's... He shook his head. No one should have to do that. Her eyes went bright. She looked away quickly, blinking. Thank you, she said. For calling, for not making me feel like I imagined it. You didn't imagine anything. No. She gathered her purse, her coat. I guess I didn't. She stood, hesitated. Marcus, when you confront her, and you will eventually, don't let her make you the villain. Don't let her turn it around. I let David do that for a year, and it almost broke me. I won't. Promise me. I promise. She nodded once. Then she was gone, the diner door swinging shut behind her, letting in a blade of cold November air. Marcus sat in the booth for a long time after. His coffee went cold, the ring pressed against his leg. Outside, the sky was the color of ash, threatening snow that wouldn't come for days, 2 years. He thought about Michelle at home, doing laundry, making dinner plans, living the life she'd constructed on top of the one she'd hidden. He thought about David in his corner office Monday morning, shaking hands, making small talk, pretending nothing was wrong. He thought about Jenny, driving home to a house full of lies she'd finally stopped believing. Don't let her make you the villain. He wouldn't. But first, he had to understand who the villain actually was. Maybe it was Michelle. Maybe it was David. Maybe it was all of them. Every person who'd chosen comfort over truth, including himself. He left a 20 on the table and walked out into the cold. The ring stayed in his pocket. The evidence was building, and Sunday was coming. He waited until Sunday, let her think everything was fine. 2 days of performance. 2 days of nodding at the right moments, laughing at her jokes, sleeping beside her like a man who didn't know. Marcus discovered he was good at it, better than he wanted to be. Maybe they'd both been performing all along. Sunday evening, Michelle stood at the stove making pasta. Something with garlic and white wine, the recipe she saved for weekends. She was humming. That song from the car commercial, the one she couldn't get out of her head. Steam rose around her face, softening her features. Marcus sat at the kitchen island, watching her move through a space they'd shared for 6 years. The cutting board she'd bought at a farmer's market, the knife set from their wedding registry, the window above the sink where winter light came through thin and gray. He set the ring on the counter. The sound was small, metal on granite, but Michelle heard it. Her hand stopped mid-stir. She turned. For a long moment, she just looked at it. The gold band, the inscription facing up, to David, forever yours. Where did you get that? The turkey? Her face cycled through expressions like weather systems. Confusion, denial, calculation. Then something else. Something that looked almost like relief. Marcus, don't. Let me explain. How long? It's complicated. How long? She set the wooden spoon on the counter. Sauce dripped onto the surface, red spreading like a stain. She didn't wipe it up. 18 months. The number hung there. He'd prepared himself for it. Jenny's phone records had suggested more, but hearing it from Michelle's mouth made it real. In a way, evidence couldn't. 18 months. That was last May. That was the barbecue where David brought those fancy steaks and everyone said he was too generous. That was the long weekend Michelle took with girlfriends, while Marcus stayed home to catch up on work. That was their anniversary dinner, the one where she cried and said she was just so happy, so grateful for everything they'd built. 18 months, he repeated. Yes. Jenny says 2 years. The phone records go back 2 years. Michelle's face shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes, caught, recalculating. The phone records are wrong. But phone records don't lie, Michelle. They're not capable of it. Marcus, please. Can we sit down? Can we talk about this like adults? We are talking. I'm sitting. You can stand if you want. She didn't sit. She stayed by the stove, one hand gripping the counter like it might hold her up. I was lonely. Her voice dropped, the register she used when she wanted to sound vulnerable. You have to understand that. I was so lonely, Marcus. You were here every day, in this house, but you weren't here. I'd talk to you, and you'd nod and go back to your laptop. I'd try to connect, and you'd be somewhere else. I felt invisible. So you slept with my coworker. David saw me, he listened. He made me feel like I mattered. David's married to your best friend. I know. You've been lying to Jenny for 2 years, standing next to her at book club, hugging her at holidays, planning New Year's Eve while you're screwing her husband. Michelle flinched. It sounds worse when you say it like that. How should I say it? I don't know. She pressed her palms to her eyes. I didn't plan this, Marcus. It just happened. One thing led to another, and then it was too late to stop, and I didn't know how to tell you, and you put the ring in the turkey. She went still. You didn't lose it. You didn't drop it by accident. You put it there, knowing I'd find it. Marcus kept his voice level, flat, the voice he used in negotiations at work, when showing emotion meant losing ground. Why? Silence. Michelle, why? Because I couldn't say it. Her voice cracked. I tried. So many times I tried to tell you, but the words wouldn't come out. And I thought, if you found it, maybe you'd ask. Maybe you'd make me tell you. Maybe I wouldn't have to be the one to break it. So you made me do it instead. I didn't mean it like that. You put evidence of your affair inside the Thanksgiving turkey, inside a meal you spent 2 days preparing, inside a tradition you said mattered to you, and you let me carve it while our families watched. His voice rose despite himself. You made me the one who found it? You made me carry this for 3 days while you hummed around the house like nothing was wrong. That wasn't an accident, Michelle. That was a choice. You're right. She wiped her eyes. You're right, okay? I was a coward. I couldn't face you, so I made you face it instead. Is that what you wanted to hear? I want to hear the truth. All of it, not the version you've rehearsed. This is the truth. Then tell me about the funeral. Her face changed. The tears stopped. What? Your mother's funeral. The one I missed because of work. The one I sent flowers to instead of showing up for. Tell me about that. Michelle's jaw tightened. Something harder came into her eyes. Something he'd never seen before. Or maybe had never let himself see. You want to know when it started? Really? Her voice went cold. It started when you sent a fruit basket to my mother's funeral because your flight got delayed. It started when you called me from the airport 2 hours after they put her in the ground to tell me how sorry you were, how the product launch just couldn't wait, how you'd make it up to me. Michelle, it started when I sat in that church alone, Marcus. When I watched them lower her casket and you weren't there. When everyone asked where my husband was and I had to make excuses for you. She was shaking now, but not with tears, with something older. You want to talk about choices? That was your choice. You chose work over my dead mother. And I never told you how much that broke me because you never asked. You sent flowers and you moved on and you never once asked if I was okay. Marcus sat very still. He remembered. The product launch, critical, they'd said. The emergency meeting that couldn't be rescheduled. He'd booked a flight that should have gotten him there in time. And then weather happened, and then delays, and then excuses. He'd called her from the terminal, sent flowers when he landed, told himself it was enough. It wasn't enough. I didn't know, he said. You didn't ask. You should have told me. You should have come. Silence. The pasta water boiled over, hissing on the burner. Neither of them moved to stop it. That doesn't justify 2 years of lies, Marcus said finally. No, it doesn't. Michelle's voice was flat now, emptied out. But you wanted to know when it started. That's when it started, not with David, with you, with us, with everything we stopped saying to each other because it was easier to pretend. The ring sat on the counter between them, evidence of her betrayal. But also, maybe, evidence of something else, a marriage that had been dying long before David, long before the hotel rooms and the secret texts and the ring inside the turkey. You should have told me, Marcus said again. I should have done a lot of things. Michelle turned off the burner. The kitchen went quiet. So should you. She walked past him, toward the stairs, stopped at the doorway. I'll stay at Jenny's tonight, she said. The irony isn't lost on me. Does Jenny know that you're coming? Not yet, but she will soon enough. Michelle looked back at him. Her face was strange. Grief and anger and something that might have been regret, all layered together. I'm sorry, Marcus, for what it's worth. I'm sorry for all of it. I know you are. Is that enough? He thought about it, really thought. No, he said, it's not. She nodded, like she'd expected it, like she'd known all along. I'll come back for my things tomorrow. Then she was gone, her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of drawers opening and closing, the front door falling shut behind her. Marcus sat in the kitchen until the pasta water evaporated and the pot began to scorch. The ring stayed on the counter, the garlic smell turned bitter. You should have come. She wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. She wasn't wrong, and it didn't change anything. And he still didn't know how to hold both truths at once. He turned off the ruined pot. He picked up the ring. He went to bed alone for the first time in 6 years. She slept at Jenny's that night. The irony wasn't lost on him. Marcus stood at the bedroom window watching the empty driveway. Michelle's car was gone. She'd taken it when she left, along with a suitcase and whatever dignity she could pack in 15 minutes. The streetlights made everything look yellow and sick. He didn't sleep. Sometime around 3 in the morning, he walked through the house. Room by room, like an inspector cataloging damage after a flood. The living room, with the throw pillows she'd picked out. The dining room where they'd hosted Thanksgivings for 6 years. The kitchen where the scorched pot still sat on the stove. Ruined beyond cleaning. He threw the pot away. Stood at the sink looking out at the backyard. Dead grass. Empty bird feeder. The patio furniture they'd meant to bring in before winter. Everything looked the same. Everything was different. Monday morning. Gray light through the curtains. Marcus called in sick. 4th day now. A record he'd never come close to breaking. His boss would start asking questions soon. His team would start wondering. Let them wonder. He made coffee out of habit, then let it go cold on the counter. Michelle's mug was still in the cabinet, the one that said "World's Okayest Wife," that he'd bought as a joke. 3 Christmases ago, she'd laughed so hard she cried. He closed the cabinet without touching it. The house was too quiet. He'd never noticed before how much of its sound was her. The music she played while cooking, the reality shows she watched in the background, the way she hummed when she didn't know she was humming. Now there was just the refrigerator, cycling on and off, and the tick of the hallway clock. He opened her closet. Some things were missing. Not everything. She'd only taken what fit in the suitcase. Her winter coat was still there, the red one she wore to Christmas parties. Her yoga clothes hung in a neat row, unused for actual yoga. Her jewelry box sat on the dresser, half empty, the velvet lining molded to shapes of things she'd taken. Marcus touched the red coat, soft wool. He remembered buying it for her, the way her face lit up when she opened the box. It's perfect. How did you know? He hadn't known. He'd asked the saleswoman what was popular. Picked the most expensive one. Let someone else's taste substitute for attention. You should have come. Her voice in his head. The funeral he'd missed. The flowers he'd sent instead. The phone call from the airport, full of apologies that cost him nothing. He sat on the edge of the bed. Their bed. The mattress dipped where she usually slept. Memory foam holding her shape. Dean's trailer smelled like coffee and diesel and the particular loneliness of men who'd stopped trying to impress anyone. Wood paneling from the 70s. A TV older than Marcus's marriage. Ashtrays Dean no longer used but couldn't bring himself to throw away. Marcus had driven there without deciding to. Just got in the car and pointed it toward the only place that felt honest. Dean handed him a mug. Black coffee, no question asked. So she blamed the funeral. Partly. That's convenient. She's not wrong, Dean. Marcus stared into the mug. I wasn't there. Dean settled into the armchair across from him, a recliner so old it had developed its own posture. Man, I've missed anniversaries, birthdays, my kids' first steps because I was hauling freight to Tulsa. You know what my ex-wives didn't do? What? Sleep with my coworkers for 2 years and stuff the evidence in a turkey. Marcus almost smiled. The muscles didn't quite remember how. Missing a funeral's a mistake, Dean continued. A bad one, sure, but it's a mistake. What she did, that's not a mistake. That's a choice, 1,000 choices. Every hotel room, every lie, every time she looked you in the eye and pretended, that's not one moment of weakness, that's a whole second life. I know. Do you? Because you're sitting there looking like a man who thinks he deserves this. Marcus didn't answer. Dean leaned forward. Listen to me. You missed a funeral. That's bad. That's something you gotta own. But it doesn't give her permission to burn down your whole life. It doesn't give her permission to lie to your face every single day for 2 years. You understand? I understand. Do you? I don't know. Marcus set the mug down. I don't know what I understand anymore. The afternoon bled into evening. Dean ordered pizza neither of them ate. They sat on the trailer's small porch, watching the sky go purple over the empty lot next door. Jenny called, Marcus said. Yeah? She pulled more records. David's been lying about everything. Conferences that didn't exist. Visits to his dead mother. He laughed, but it came out wrong. His mother's been dead 5 years. Jesus. She's filing tomorrow. Already has a lawyer. Dean nodded slowly. Smart woman. She asked me to wait, before I do anything public. She wants to handle David her way. And you're gonna let her? It's her marriage. Her choice. Generous of you. It's not generous. Marcus watched a bird settle on a fence post, then fly off. It's just, I don't know what destroying him would give me. I thought I wanted it. I thought I wanted to walk into that office Monday and burn his whole career down. But now I just want to know how I got here. Dean was quiet for a long time. The pizza box sat between them, grease congealing on the cardboard. You want my opinion? Would it matter if I didn't? Not really. Dean cracked his knuckles. You got here the way everyone gets here, one day at a time. One small thing you didn't say, one small thing you didn't notice, one small thing you let slide because it was easier than dealing with it. And then you wake up and it's 2 years later and your wife's sleeping with your coworker and you're sitting on my porch wondering where it all went wrong. Marcus stared at the empty lot, weeds and broken concrete, a shopping cart someone had abandoned months ago. I knew, he said. Dean looked at him. 6 months ago. The words came slow, dragged up from somewhere he'd been keeping them buried. There was a text on her phone. I wasn't snooping. It just lit up while she was in the shower. Can't wait to see you. No name, just a number. And I told myself it was her sister. Was it her sister? We both know it wasn't. Dean didn't say anything, just waited. I could have scrolled, could have looked at the other messages, could have asked her about it, but I didn't want to know. I wanted... Marcus's voice broke. He stopped, breathed, started again. I wanted it to not be true more than I wanted the truth. So I put the phone down, and I went back to my laptop, and I didn't say anything, and she never said anything. And we just kept going. The confession sat there, ugly and real. So you're both guilty of something, Dean said. I guess. That don't make you even. What she did and what you did, those aren't the same weight. I know. But it's eating you anyway. Marcus nodded, couldn't speak. Here's what I think. Dean shifted in his chair, the old metal creaking. You've been telling yourself a story for 6 months. The story where you didn't know. The story where you're just the victim, blindsided and betrayed. And now that story's falling apart, and you don't know who you are without it. That's not... Let me finish. Dean's voice was gentle, which was somehow worse than if he'd been harsh. You didn't cheat, you didn't lie for 2 years, you didn't build a whole second life behind her back. But you saw a crack in the wall, and you papered over it. Because you were scared of what was on the other side. That's human. That's what people do. But it doesn't make you innocent. Marcus wiped his eyes. When had they gotten wet? So, what do? You stop pretending you didn't see it. You own that part, your part, and you let go of hers. Her choices are hers. Your choices are yours. And beating yourself up for not being brave enough to look at a text message 6 months ago isn't gonna change any of it. It feels like it should. Yeah, it does. Dean stood, stretched, his back popping. But it won't. The only thing that changes anything is what you do next. Marcus sat with that. The sky was fully dark now, stars emerging, faint against the light pollution from town. I didn't see it because I didn't look, he said finally. Now you're looking. That's the difference. Is it enough? Dean shrugged. Ask me in a year. Later, inside the trailer, Dean made up the couch with sheets that smelled like fabric softener and old cigarettes. Marcus lay there in the dark, listening to the wind move through the trees outside. He thought about Michelle, somewhere across town, sleeping in Jenny's guest room. Did Jenny know yet? Had Michelle told her everything? Or just enough? Were they crying together? Or sitting in separate silences? He thought about David, probably at home with the kids, pretending everything was normal. Did he know it was over? Was he rehearsing his excuses? Or was he still living in the fiction that he'd gotten away with it? He thought about the text message. Can't wait to see you. 6 months of knowing and not knowing. Of choosing the comfortable lie over the uncomfortable truth. You saw a crack in the wall and you papered over it. Dean was right. That was exactly what he'd done. And now the wall was down, and there was nothing left to paper over, and he had to decide what kind of man he was going to be on the other side of the wreckage. The trailer creaked in the wind. Somewhere a dog barked. Marcus closed his eyes but didn't sleep. Tomorrow he would go back to the house. Tomorrow he would figure out what came next. But tonight he just lay there in the dark, holding the weight of everything he'd let himself not see. Tuesday was the first day he didn't check her location. The app was still there on his phone. That little blue dot that could tell him exactly where Michelle was, what lie she was living in real time. He'd been checking it compulsively since Thursday, watching her move through a city that suddenly felt foreign. Tuesday morning, he deleted it. Not because he'd forgiven her, not because he'd stopped caring, but because knowing where she was didn't change anything. She could be at Jenny's, or a hotel, or David's apartment, or the moon. It didn't matter. She wasn't here. That was the only geography that counted. He went back to the house. Everything was still there. The turkey carcass in the trash, starting to smell. The nice dishes stacked by the sink because no one had finished cleaning. The scorched pot he'd thrown away, now sitting in the garage with the rest of the garbage. Marcus cleaned, methodically, room by room, the way he'd walked through the house that first sleepless night. But this time, he was erasing rather than cataloging. He washed the dishes, took out the garbage, vacuumed the floors, wiped down the counters where pasta sauce had dried into dark stains. The work was mindless, physical, the kind of thing that let his body move while his brain stayed somewhere else. By noon, the house looked normal, like nothing had happened, like a family could walk in any minute and pick up where they'd left off. The lie of it made his chest hurt. Outside, the first snow started. Thin flakes on a gray sky, the kind that wouldn't stick but would make everything damp and cold. Marcus stood on the back porch, hands in his pockets, watching it fall. The patio furniture was still out. He should bring it in. Michelle usually reminded him. He left it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out without thinking. "Michelle, can we talk?" He read the message. Read it again. Watched the cursor blink, waiting for him to respond. He put the phone away. Another buzz. A few minutes later, different number. David. "Marcus, I know you're angry. Let me explain." Marcus blocked the number, didn't hesitate, didn't think about it. Just watched David's name disappear from his phone like it had never existed. That part, at least, was easy. The afternoon stretched long and empty. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd confronted Michelle, where the ring had sat between them like an accusation, and stared at the wall. He could destroy David. The thought kept coming back, a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. One email to HR, screenshots of the texts Jenny had shared, the affair with a colleague's wife, a subordinate relationship that probably violated half a dozen company policies. David's career would be over, his reputation in the industry finished. It would feel good, for a moment, but Jenny had asked him to wait. "Let me do this my way, please." And there was something else, something harder to name. Destroying David wouldn't undo anything. It wouldn't erase the hotel rooms or the lies or the ring and the turkey. It wouldn't give Marcus back the 2 years he'd spent living in a fiction. It would just be revenge, clean and satisfying and ultimately empty. He thought about Michelle's face when she'd said the word funeral. The way it cracked open, something neither of them had named. She'd sat in that church alone, watched them lower her mother into the ground. Made excuses to everyone who asked where her husband was. And he'd sent flowers, called from the airport with apologies that cost him nothing, moved on without ever looking back. You should have come. He should have. That was the truth, and it didn't change anything, but it was still the truth. Evening came. The snow had stopped, leaving a thin white film over the dead grass. Marcus walked through the house again, not cleaning this time, just looking. The bedroom, the bed they'd shared for 6 years, the nightstand where her phone used to charge, lighting up with messages he'd never thought to read. Who have I been married to? He'd asked Dean that question. But there was a harder one underneath it. Who have I been? A man who worked, who provided, who showed up physically and absented himself every other way, who thought presence was the same as attention, who thought stability was the same as love. He'd given Michelle a life, a house, a car, vacations, the things that were supposed to matter. But he'd never asked what she actually needed, never noticed when she stopped asking, never wondered why the silence between them had grown so comfortable. She should have told him. That was true, but he should have made it safe to tell. He sat on the edge of the bed, hands on his knees. The snowlight coming through the window made everything look gray and uncertain. You saw a crack in the wall and you papered over it, not just 6 months ago, for years. Every time she seemed distant and he blamed work. Every time she tried to talk and he nodded without listening. Every time he chose the easy assumption over the hard question. He'd built a marriage on the things he didn't ask. And she'd built a secret inside it. Both of them, architects of the same ruin, working from different blueprints. He thought about Jenny, filing for divorce tomorrow, probably lying awake right now, in her own empty bed, running the same calculations he was, what to keep, what to let go, how to explain to the kids that the world they knew was built on sand. He thought about Dean, alone in his trailer, 2 marriages behind him and nothing ahead but the road. Was that where Marcus was headed? Was that the shape of his future? A man who'd learned too late how to be present. He thought about the text message. Can't wait to see you. The choice he'd made to look away. The comfort he'd bought with his own blindness. And he thought about Michelle. Not the woman who'd betrayed him. That version was easy to hate. But the woman who'd sat in that church alone. The woman who'd buried her grief so deep it turned into something else. The woman who'd tried, once, to tell him she was hurting, and found him already looking at his laptop. He wasn't innocent, neither was she. But knowing that didn't tell him what to do next. Marcus stood, walked to the window, pressed his hand against the cold glass. The snow was melting already. Thin and temporary, like most beautiful things. By morning there'd be nothing left but mud and the memory of white. What do you want? Dean had asked him that. Revenge? Answers just out? He didn't want revenge. Not anymore. The fantasy of destroying David had lost its heat, leaving only ash. He didn't want answers either. He had enough of those now, more than he could carry. What he wanted was simpler and harder. He wanted to be the kind of man who didn't have to learn these lessons twice. He wanted to be the kind of man who looked. The window was cold under his palm. Outside, the world went dark. Inside, the house held its silence like a held breath. Tomorrow, he'd have to make decisions, talk to lawyers, face the machinery of ending a marriage. But tonight, he just stood there, letting the cold seep in, letting the quiet stay quiet. Learning, finally, how to be alone with himself. Jenny asked him to come to her house. I need a witness, she said. Wednesday afternoon, 3 days after the world ended. Marcus drove across town through gray slush and salt-stained streets, past strip malls and fast food joints, and the ordinary machinery of suburban life. Everything looked normal. Nothing was. Jenny's house was nicer than his. He noticed it now in a way that meant something. Bigger lawn, better car in the driveway. The kind of place that said we made it to anyone driving past. She met him at the door before he could knock. Her face was set, jaw tight, but her hands were shaking. Thank you for coming. You said you needed a witness. I do. She stepped aside to let him in. David doesn't know I know. I told him we were having people over. A post-Thanksgiving thing. People. You, Michelle. Jenny's voice was steady, but something underneath it wasn't. I invited her too. Marcus stopped in the foyer. Family photos lined the walls. Jenny and David at their wedding, the kids at various ages, a vacation somewhere tropical. All of it evidence of a life that had looked real. You invited Michelle. I want them in the same room. I want to see their faces when they realize it's over. Jenny, I need this, Marcus. Her voice cracked, then steadied. I've spent a year doubting myself. A year of him telling me I was crazy, paranoid, making problems. I need to see him squirm before I hand over the papers. I need to know it was real. Marcus understood. More than he wanted to admit. The fantasy of watching them realize the game was up. He'd played that scene in his head 100 times since Thursday. Okay, he said. I'm here. Jenny nodded, let out a breath she'd been holding. They'll be here soon. David thinks it's drinks and appetizers. Michelle thinks... I don't know what Michelle thinks. I just told her we needed to talk. Does she know I'll be here? No. Marcus looked around the living room. Tasteful furniture. Soft lighting. A fireplace with family photos on the mantel. The stage was set for destruction. Where do you want me? Wherever you'll be seen when they walk in. He chose the armchair by the window. Sat down, waited. David's car pulled in first. Marcus watched through the window. The BMW easing into the driveway. David checking his hair in the rearview mirror. Still performing, even now. Still playing the part of the man he wanted people to see. The front door opened. David's voice, easy and warm. Hey, babe. Something smells good. Are we... He stopped. Marcus watched the recognition hit, the slight freeze, the quick calculation behind the eyes. David stood in the doorway of the living room, coat half off, staring at the man whose wife he'd been sleeping with for 2 years. Marcus... Not a question, a statement. Flat and careful. David. Jenny appeared behind her husband. Come in, honey. Sit down. What's going on? Sit down. Something in her voice made him obey. David lowered himself onto the couch across from Marcus, movements stiff, the easy charm draining from his face. Jenny, whatever this is, we're waiting for one more person. 5 minutes of silence. David trying to catch Marcus's eye, failing. Jenny standing by the fireplace, arms crossed, watching the door, then Michelle's car. The headlights sweeping across the window. Footsteps on the porch, the door opened. Michelle saw Marcus first. Her face went white. Then she saw Jenny, saw the way Jenny was looking at her. And Marcus watched something collapse behind his wife's eyes. The last wall, the final pretense, crumbling in real time. Sit down, Jenny said, both of you. What followed was ugly, necessary. The kind of conversation that stripped away every polite fiction two couples had built over years of dinners and holidays and borrowed lawn equipment. David tried to explain first, words tumbling out, how it wasn't what it looked like, how things had gotten complicated, how he'd never meant for anyone to get hurt. 2 years, Jenny said. The phone records go back 2 years, David. Jenny, please, don't say my name like that. Her voice went cold. Don't you dare use that voice on me. That's the voice you used every time I asked if something was wrong. That's the voice that made me think I was losing my mind. David looked at Marcus, desperate, looking for an ally, a fellow man who might understand. Marcus said nothing. Michelle sat at the far end of the couch, as far from David as the furniture allowed. She hadn't spoken since she walked in. Her hands were folded in her lap, knuckles white. Michelle. Jenny turned to her. You were my best friend, 20 years. You stood next to me at my wedding. You held my babies, and the whole time, not the whole time, 2 years is the whole time. 2 years of book clubs and phone calls and telling me I was paranoid. 2 years of hugging me in my own kitchen while you were sleeping with my husband. Jenny's voice broke. How could you? Michelle looked up. Her eyes were wet, but she didn't cry. I don't have an answer that will make sense to you. I don't have an excuse. She stopped, shook her head. There's nothing I can say. You're right, there isn't. The room went quiet. David staring at the floor. Michelle staring at her hands. Jenny standing by the fireplace, trembling with rage or grief or both. Marcus watched all of it. The people he'd trusted, reduced to their smallest selves. The marriage that had looked perfect from the outside, rotting from within. He thought about the ring in his pocket, the evidence that had started all of this. He could pull it out now, throw it at David, demand explanations, make a scene. But Jenny had asked him to wait, to let her handle David her way. And somewhere in the past week, Marcus had decided what kind of man he wanted to be. Jenny gets to decide what happens next. Everyone looked at him. The first words he'd spoken since Michelle walked in. About David, about all of it. This is her house, her marriage, her choice. He kept his voice level. I could burn him down at work. I could make sure everyone in the industry knows what he did, but that's Jenny's call to make, not mine. She's earned that. David started to speak. Marcus cut him off. I'm talking to her, not you. Jenny's face shifted. Something moved behind her eyes. Surprise, gratitude, something else he couldn't name. I want him out, she said slowly. I want the divorce quiet for the kids. I don't need him destroyed. I just need him gone. Then that's what happens. Marcus stood, walked toward Michelle. She looked up at him with an expression he'd never seen before. Fear, maybe? Or the absence of hope. I'll have papers ready by Friday, he said. Take what you want from the house. I won't fight you. Marcus, we're done. Not because of David. Because I can't build something with someone who couldn't tell me she was hurt until she was already gone. The words came out quieter than he expected. Not angry, just true. Michelle nodded. Her face crumpled, then steadied. I'm sorry, she said, for all of it. I know you are. Is that enough? He'd answered that question before, in their kitchen. The answer hadn't changed. No, but it's what we have, he turned to Jenny. She was still standing by the fireplace, arms wrapped around herself. Thank you, she said, for letting me do this. Thank you for including me. He walked to the door, paused, looked back at the room. 4 people, 2 marriages, everything broken and nothing fixable. I hope your kids are okay, he said to Jenny. They don't deserve any of this. No, they don't. And he left. The drive home was quiet. No radio, no phone, just the sound of tires on wet pavement and the heater pushing warm air against the cold. Marcus thought about revenge. How easy it would have been. How good it would have felt. How empty it would have left him. He'd given that up. Handed it to Jenny like a gift, even though it cost him the satisfaction he'd been craving since Thursday. But something else had replaced it. Something harder to name. He'd stood in that room and chosen dignity over destruction. Chosen Jenny's healing over his own anger. Chosen to be the man who looked at the wreckage and didn't add to it. It wasn't forgiveness. He wasn't sure he'd ever get there. But it was something. It was enough. 3 weeks later, he cooked a meal for 1. The house was half empty now. Michelle had come back twice. Once with her sister, once with a rented van, and taken the things that were hers. The throw pillows, the coffee maker, the photographs that had her kids in them. Fair enough. They weren't his memories to keep. What remained was sparse but functional. A couch, a table. The bed he'd bought new because sleeping on the old mattress felt like lying in a grave. Small mercies, purchased at a furniture outlet on Route 33. Marcus stood at the kitchen island, cutting vegetables for a stir-fry. Something simple. The knife in his hand moved smooth and sure. Onions, peppers, garlic. The rhythm of ordinary life reasserting itself. No scrape of metal on metal. No hidden evidence waiting to be found. Just food. Just a man feeding himself. The ring sat on the windowsill above the sink. He'd put it there a week ago, not quite sure why. Couldn't throw it away. It felt like destroying evidence of something he needed to remember. Couldn't keep it in a drawer. That felt like hiding. So he'd set it on the sill, where the morning light could catch it, and left it there. Now it glinted in the late afternoon sun, gold on white paint, the inscription facing outward, toward the window, toward whatever came next. Forever yours. Somebody's forever, not his burden anymore. The divorce papers had arrived Monday, clean and clinical, everything reduced to assets and signatures. Michelle had agreed to his terms without negotiation. The house was his, the retirement accounts split evenly, No alimony, either direction. Maybe guilt made her generous. Maybe she just wanted it over. Marcus signed where the lawyer told him to sign. Mailed them back the same day. Done. Except nothing was done, not really. The legal machinery could process a marriage into paper and numbers, but it couldn't touch the other stuff. The memories that ambushed him at odd moments, the phantom presence he still felt in empty rooms, the dreams where nothing had happened, and he woke up reaching for someone who wasn't there. That would take longer, maybe years, maybe forever, but he was learning to live with it. Dean called most evenings now. Never said much, just checking in the way brothers do when words aren't the point. Last night he'd mentioned a fishing trip, some lake up north where the ice wouldn't be safe for another month. When it freezes solid, Dean said, you and me, couple of rods, couple of beers. No women, no drama, just fish that are too stupid to know better. Sounds good. You mean that? Yeah, I think I do. A pause on the line. Then Dean's voice, softer than usual. You're gonna be okay, Marcus. I know. Do you? I'm getting there. Jenny texted sometimes. Brief updates, carefully worded. The divorce was moving. The kids were confused, but okay. David had moved into an apartment across town, started therapy, was telling everyone who'd listen that he was working on himself. Working on himself. Marcus almost smiled at that, as if a few sessions with a counselor could undo 2 years of lies. But that was David's journey now, not his. Jenny's last message had been different, longer, more personal. I've been thinking about what you did at the house. Giving me the choice. Letting me handle him my way. You didn't have to do that. Marcus had stared at the screen for a long time before responding. You earned it, maybe, but most people wouldn't have seen it that way. Most people would have wanted their pound of flesh. I thought about it. Decided it wouldn't help. How did you decide that? He'd considered the question carefully before answering. I asked myself who I wanted to be when it was over. The answer wasn't the guy who burned everything down. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, I'm glad you were the one who found that ring. Me too, somehow. Evening settled over the house. Marcus ate his stir-fry at the kitchen table. The same table where he'd confronted Michelle, where the ring had sat between them like an accusation. Now it was just a table. Wood and legs and the scratches of ordinary use. He washed his plate, dried it, put it away. The ring caught the last light of day, turning amber, then bronze, then dark. He thought about moving it, putting it in a box, storing it somewhere out of sight, but something stopped him. The ring belonged here now, part of the house, part of the story, a small monument to everything that had broken and everything that remained. It's tradition, Michelle had said about the turkey, about Thanksgiving, about all the rituals they'd performed without examining. Marcus thought about tradition now. The old ones were gone. Holidays with her family, dinners at Jenny and David's, the comfortable fictions they'd all agreed to believe. He'd have to build new ones. Smaller, maybe. Simpler. Traditions for a man learning to be alone without being lonely. He turned off the kitchen light, stood in the doorway for a moment, looking back at the room where everything had changed, the ring on the windowsill, the empty chairs, the silence that no longer felt like absence. Gratitude isn't about what you're given, it's about what you finally stop pretending you have. The thought arrived quietly, without fanfare. Not a revelation, just a truth that had been waiting for him to be ready to hear it. He wasn't grateful for what happened. He'd never be grateful for the betrayal, the lies, the 2 years of his life built on sand, but he was grateful for this, the quiet, the clarity, the chance to start again with eyes open. Outside, the snow had melted. The yard was mud and brown grass, ugly and honest and real. Spring was still months away, but it would come. It always did. Marcus walked through the dark house, climbed the stairs, lay down in his new bed, in his half-empty room, in the life he was slowly learning to call his own. He closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he didn't dream about her. He dreamed about the lake, ice thick enough to hold, 2 brothers sitting in silence, lines dropped through holes in the frozen surface, waiting for something to bite. When he woke, the sun was coming through the window. He made coffee. He let the day begin.